I am Medusa, and this is my story, from my eyes.
They carried my head across the sea in a sack of black leather. Even dead, I was still killing. I remember the storm, the screams, warriors sleeping across blood-soaked wood while statues of stone toppled across the deck around them. One sailor looked at me for less than a heartbeat. That was all it took. His skin hardened, his mouth froze open. Then the waves shattered him against the mast like broken marble. Men feared monsters, but they never asked who created them. My name is Medusa, and before the serpents, before the curse, before heroes crossed oceans to hunt me, I was human. The sea raged the night I was born. Fishermen abandoned their boats. Dogs howled toward the cliffs. Even the temple fires refused to stay lit. The old women whispered that the gods were watching. My sisters, Athena and Euryale, were immortal from birth. I was not. I was the fragile one, the mortal daughter. But as I grew older, people stopped speaking about my weakness. They spoke about my face. Men stared too long. Women looked away when I passed. Travelers carried stories of me across Greece like rumors of war. Beauty sounds like a blessing until the gods notice it. And one of them did. They brought me to the temple young. The priests called it an honor. Serve Athena, remain pure, devote your life to wisdom and discipline. The temple stood above the sea like a fortress of white stone, beautiful from outside, cold inside. Every word controlled, every movement watched. I became Athena's priestess. White robes, sacred vows, endless prayers beneath torchlight while storms crashed below the cliffs. But then the visitors began arriving. At first, dozens, then hundreds. Not for Athena, for me. Men traveled across kingdoms just to see my face. Some brought gold, some brought flowers. Some stared at me like starving animals. The priestesses began whispering behind my back, and slowly, the temple stopped feeling holy. It started feeling dangerous. The fight started outside the temple gates. A merchant lost an eye over me. Two nobles stabbed each other beneath Athena's statue. One poet collapsed sobbing after I refused to speak to him. I never asked for any of it, but the stories spread faster each month. They compared me to goddesses, said no mortal woman should look the way I did. Inside the temple, the tension became unbearable. Priests argued, followers divided. Some blamed me for the chaos growing around the sanctuary. Then the sea changed. The waves became violent without warning. The air smelled of storms. Torches flickered whenever I entered the halls. One night, every flame inside Athena's temple suddenly died. Darkness swallowed the sanctuary. And somewhere below the cliffs, I heard laughter rising from the ocean. A god had arrived. The sea exploded against the cliffs the night he came. Waves struck so hard the temple walls trembled. Then he walked through the doors, not as mist, not as legend, a god. The air itself bent around him. Everyone lowered their heads except me. I could feel his eyes on me immediately, heavy, possessive, curious, like a predator studying prey. He He walked through Athena's sacred halls without fear, seawater dripping from bronze armor while thunder rolled outside. No one dared stop him, not the guards, not the priests, not even Athena's followers, because gods do not ask permission, they take. And from the moment Poseidon looked at me, I knew something terrible had begun. I remember rain hammering the temple roof. I remember lightning turning the halls white. And I remember realizing too late that no mortal could escape a god who had already decided what he wanted. The sanctuary became a prison. Some say I welcomed him. Others say I begged him to stop. The truth no longer matters to history, only to me. Outside, the storm swallowed the world. Inside Athena's temple, everything changed. Then came silence, a terrible silence, the kind that follows destruction. And when the goddess finally saw what had happened within her sacred temple, her rage shook the heavens. But gods rarely punish each other. They punish mortals. Athena did not scream. That was a terrifying part. She simply looked at me, cold, perfect, merciless. Then the pain began. I collapsed onto the temple floor as my body twisted beneath me. My hair writhed first. Not hair anymore. Serpents. Dozens of them. Screaming, hissing, coiling around my face while the priest fled in terror. My skin hardened. My eyes burned like molten metal. Then one servant looked directly at me. He turned to stone instantly. I still remember the sound. Athena stood above me, unmoving, while panic consumed the temple. And in that moment, I understood. The gods had turned me into the very thing they feared. They hunted me before sunrise. Priests, soldiers, villagers carrying torches and blades. I ran from the temple, screaming, while statues lined the streets behind me. Anyone who looked into my eyes died. Some shattered where they stood. Others froze mid-step forever. I covered my face. I hid in forests. I begged people not to look at me. It did not matter. To Greece, I was no longer human. Children cried at my name. Kings promised gold for my head. Warriors crossed oceans hoping to become famous by killing me. Even monsters can feel loneliness, and mine was endless. I fled to the edge of the world, an island where nothing lived for long. The cliffs were black, the caves smelled of salt and death, and everywhere around me stood statues, hundreds of them, warriors frozen in terror, hunters trapped mid-attack, men who thought glory mattered more than fear. At night, the island echoed with the sounds of my serpents whispering in the dark. Ships avoided the waters around me. Mothers used my name to frighten children. The world called me monster. Eventually, I started believing them. They came for me in waves. Kings sent champions. Mercenaries crossed oceans. Boys barely old enough to hold swords arrived dreaming of glory. All of them believed the same lie, that killing me would make them legends. I watched them enter my island, one after another, torchlight moving through dead forests, armor clattering across stone, breathing fast with fear they tried to hide. Then came the screaming. Some saw me by accident, others attacked before thinking. A few begged for mercy after realizing the stories were true. None escaped. Soon my island became a graveyard of statues, entire armies frozen mid-charge, warriors trapped forever with terror carved across their faces. And still they kept coming, because humans fear monsters, but they love hunting them even more. Then came the name whispered differently from the others. Perseus. Not a mercenary, not a fool chasing fame. Something more dangerous. A man chosen by the gods. I heard stories of him long before I saw him. Son of Zeus, raised in hardship, driven by prophecy and pride. Then a king named Polydectes sent him to do the impossible. Bring back the head of Medusa. Everyone expected him to die, but unlike the others, the gods were helping him, and gods had destroyed my life once already. I felt their presence before Perseus ever reached my island. Athena, Hermes, Olympus itself moving against me. The boy was armed with gifts no mortal should possess. Winged sandals to outrun death, a curved blade sharp enough to cut through fate itself. And worst of all, Athena's mirrored shield. She could not bear to look directly at what she had created. So she taught him to kill me, without seeing my face. Even now, I remember the rage burning through me when I understood the truth. The goddess who cursed me was guiding my execution. Inside my cave, my sisters slept beside me, while serpents coiled softly around the rocks. Then I sensed him, not by sound, by fear. Sharp, focused, controlled. He never looked directly at me, only through the reflection of Athena's shield. Clever boy. The gods had taught him well. I woke to steel flashing through darkness. My serpent screamed first, then pain exploded across my body. I lunged blindly through the cave, while Perseus dodged between shadows, refusing to meet my eyes. The entire cavern shook with chaos. Stone cracked beneath us. My sisters roared awake. And then, the blade struck. For one impossible moment, everything became silent. I remember seeing my own body collapse, black blood flooding the cave floor. My severed head still conscious, still alive. And from my blood, two beings emerged into the darkness. Pegasus and Chrysaor. Even in death, the gods were not finished with me. Death did not free me. Perseus carried my head across Greece like a weapon. Kings turned to stone. Soldiers shattered where they stood. Sea monsters died screaming beneath my gaze. I watched it all from inside darkness, unable to speak, unable to close my eyes, unable to die completely. And the world celebrated Perseus as a hero. Not one person asked if the monster had ever wanted peace. I am Medusa, and this was my life, from my perspective. If you survived my story, subscribe before the gods find you next.